Asmat Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Parama Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Sarva Gurubhyo Namaha. So we're continuing on with the, I think, 8th Vilas or 9th Vilas of Hari Bhakti Vilas. And we're talking specifically about after worshipping the deity and after taking prasadam, different types of prasadam that come from the worship of the deity, then teaching the Vedas and doing different things, studying, performing our study of scriptures and everything like that. There comes a part of the day where a person has free time where he can actually earn a living. So we were talking about some of the ways in which Hari Bhakti Vilas recommends that people can earn a living, or Vaishnavas can earn a living. So here we have text 260 and 262. And let's see. Yeah, we're in the 9th Vilas, correct. Okay. So we finished off last time. If one experiences difficulty in earning his living by proper means, then one can accept food from Shudras under certain circumstances. So the use of the word Shudra here, it really means non-Vaishnava, or people who are not Vaishnavas. So it's possible to accept food from people who are not Vaishnavas, but we have to be very careful about food coming from non-Vaishnavas, that it's following, and the best thing is to get raw ingredients, of course, from other people, and then cook them ourselves and offer them to the Lord first. But in the case of accepting cooked food, we have to be very careful that the food is being prepared in a proper way. This acceptance of food from Shudras has been authorized by great personalities. Okay, so there'll be a bit of disagreement on this by different people as to whether you can accept cooked food. So exactly what is meant here by the food, accepting food is difficult to say. All right, so now let's talk about proper means of earning one's livelihood. So from the third canto, or the third part of the Vishnu Dharmottara, it's stated, and this is text 260 to 262, the proper means of livelihood for a Brahmana is to accept charity from his disciples and from those who are honest and righteous, earned wealth from victory in battle by awarding punishment, such as fining people, I guess, and by settling disputes within his kingdom. These three are honest means of livelihood for Kshatriyas. The proper means for a Vaishya of earning his livelihood is farming, trade, and cow protection, so some sort of business. And a Shudra should maintain himself by serving the Brahmanas. Well, we can say, if we look at, it actually says, I think we have to say that it basically says that he should serve the Dvijas, not just the Brahmanas. So the other classes. Okay, so these are basic regulations for Varnashrama, the system of Varnashrama, which is a social system. In terms of being a Vaishnava, is above all of these considerations of Varnashrama in one sense. In another sense, we all live in societies, and in every society there are groups of individuals who are basically intellectuals. There are, or the priestly class. There's also the administrative or the military class. There's also the entrepreneurs or the business class, and there's also the workers. So these types of classes persist in all societies. And so there's a suggestion here in the scriptures that they earn their livelihood in different ways. Okay. So 263. In addition, wealth received from as an inheritance, as a donation offered with respect, as a dowry from the bride's parents, these are ascertained as pure. Okay, so there's a difference between dakshina and dana, or charity. So dakshina is an earned type of uh, it's a gift, a sacrificial fee which is given to a priest who performs a particular ceremony for you, or a Brahmin, or somebody who performs something for you, right? Then there's just charity, which is given to at the right place at the right time to the right person, which we look in Bhagavad Gita, we see there are different types of charity. Charity in the mode of goodness, charity in the mode of passion, charity in the mode of ignorance. So we should always perform charity in the mode of goodness. We should note that the first out of the 6 occupations of a Brahmin, yajna, yajna, patana, patana, and dana and pratikriya, dana comes before pratikriya. So dana or charity is the first. So performing sacrifice, teaching others, or doing a sacrifice for others, or teaching them how to perform sacrifice, studying and teaching the scriptures, and then giving charity and also accepting charity are the 6 activities of a Brahmin. So here it's just saying that there are certain types of charity, like for instance, when we get an inheritance, that's considered pure from our forefathers, from our parents, as a donation which is offered with respect to a person, that's considered to be pure. And a dowry means that sometimes there's different systems of dowry. One system is that the parents of the bride will give along with the bride, they'll give some money at the time of giving away the daughter in marriage. One of the reasons for this came about because most societies, except for perhaps in Kerala and in Nepal, they are patriarchal societies where the laws of inheritance, the inheritance goes to the son. So if a man had a son and a daughter, and he wants to give an inheritance to both of them because they're his children, right? So the inheritance will be given to the son at the time of the parent's death. When the parents die, the son will inherit the property of the parents. So at the time when the daughter gets married, she gets married and she enters another family. In a patriarchal society, she will become part of the husband's family. So at that time, it's like she becomes dead. She's not really dead, but she becomes dead to the parents' family. She's leaving the parents' family and joining another family for all intents and purposes. So therefore, the idea is that the parents want to give her inheritance at that time, right? So they give over that inheritance at the time when she gets married, rather than waiting till they die, like that. Okay, so that's the idea of a dowry. That's the idea of a dowry. There are some other ideas of dowry where the idea is that the parents of the bride, they want to find a good husband, and therefore they pay for the husband. They present some wealth to the daughter, like that, to help her in her new married life, or perhaps to get a good husband. They will put out this idea of a dowry, like that. Some different societies have different ideas about dowry. In sort of Islamic societies, it's the boy, the prospective prospective groom, who has to actually purchase the bride, or he has to have enough money to get married. He has to provide a dowry, like that. So there's different ideas about dowry, like that. But anyway, here we can understand in the context of the normal social system prescribed by the Smriti Shastras, that a dowry is given at the time of marriage by the bride's parents, and that is considered to be pure. That's a pure gift. Okay, so there shouldn't, we can accept a good bride, a qualified girl, right? A prospective husband or a prospective bridegroom, he can accept a good girl or a qualified girl as a wife, even without a dowry. So the dowry, whether a dowry is actually necessary or not in a marriage system, we don't, I'm not going to make any decision about that. We have to look more into the Smriti Shastras and see exactly what forms of the Smriti Shastra, we're following. But at the same time, we have to remember also that Smriti Shastra deals with Varnashram. Varnashram is a material social system which helps society run, in most cases, run more efficiently and more directed towards the ultimate goals of life, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, ultimately moksha. So, but still, it is a material system. So sometimes the systems of Vaishnavism will override some of these ideas in the Smriti Shastra. So it's not necessarily true that all Vaishnavas will insist on having a dowry or from the girl's parents. Anyway, so now we were talking about earning a living, and we're now talking about different forms of charity, like the dowry and inheritance, and specifically different types of charity, which are considered pure. And now we're going to discuss that which is to be accepted and that which is to be rejected. So just like in Bhagavad Gita, where we learn about charity in the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance, charity in the mode of passion and ignorance, it should be rejected, and we should accept charity in the mode of goodness. So in the Kurma Purana, it's stated in text 264, a Brahmana should not eat food given by a Shudra. Right? So just remember at the same time, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually followed this rule. This is a social rule, like that. At the same time, a Shudra Vaishnava, or what we call a Sat Shudra, a Vaishnava Shudra, right? If he prepares food and offers it to the Supreme Lord, obviously if he's a Vaishnava, he's going to offer his food also to the Supreme Lord. That food becomes transcendental because it's offered to the Lord. So this is the ordinary rule from ordinary society, from ordinary Varnashram. But in the case where the Brahmin is a Vaishnava and the Shudra is also a Vaishnava, if a Shudra makes food, if a Vaishnava Shudra makes food, he's going to make proper food, he's going to prepare it in a proper way, it's going to be clean, it's going to be sattvic food, and he's going to offer it to the Supreme Lord, and then it's going to become prasadam. So there's no way that we can say that a Brahmana, a Vaishnava Brahmana, or even an ordinary Brahmana cannot accept that Vaishnava Shudra's food that he's cooked. So the rules of Vaishnavism would supersede these, but these are the normal rules, of course, given in Varnashram, that a Brahmana should not eat food given by a Shudra. Given by a Shudra or cooked by a Shudra. By eating the food of a Shudra, either by mistake, intentionally. So mostly what we do is when we see these quotes being made, we have to understand that Vaishnavism supersedes some of these rules of Varnashram Dharma. And if we are going to apply these rules, we should consider that the word Shudra here means a non-Vaishnava. That is also an interpretation that we can take. As far as Vaishnavas are concerned, we should not eat food given by non-Vaishnavas. So by eating the food of a Shudra, either by mistake, intentionally, or at the time of Deja, one next birth will be in a Shudra family. So the idea here is, even within Sri Vaishnavism, Ramanuja, the northern school of Sri Vaishnavism, Vadagalais, they have this idea of Paramanam, that at the time of actual surrender to the Lord, whenever that is, that after that one should not eat food that is not prepared in the house or is prasadam from the temple, like that, which is prepared outside, in outside places by ordinary people, like in restaurants or like that. Okay, so this is given in the Kurma Purana. Of course, the Puranas don't necessarily speak about pure Vaishnava societies, but they talk about the general Varnashram social system. So, text 265, it says, for human beings, all types of sin dwell in food they eat. Therefore, one who eats food of a particular person will have to accept his sins. Right? So this is This is an idea, right? And the particular word here used is anna or anne, right? Anna. The word anna can be translated as food. Generally, we translate as any food. It can also be translated as cooked food. So some people, they'll say, well, we can accept food, but as long as it's not cooked, right? If it's fruit or something like that, or if it's the ingredients, that it's food, but it's only the ingredients of food which we, because I dare say that if I want to prepare food, I have to go to the store. I have to buy food from people who are not Vaishnavas, like that, from companies and farmers who are not Vaishnavas. So obviously, we have to accept food. We have to buy food, and therefore we have to purify it in some way, like that. So probably this doesn't. There are exceptions like things which are not cooked, which are ingredients. Therefore, one who eats food of a particular person will have to accept his sins. In other words, he will have to share the sinful reactions of the person from whom he accepted food. Right. Now, this is especially true if you're accepting free food, right? If food is being offered to you without payment. But if you're paying for food, that is also a way of purifying the food. Okay. So, text 266 to 267. Among Shudras, the food of a farmer, a person whose intentions are honest, a person who takes pleasure in cow protection, and one who is a barber can be accepted. Okay. So among Shudras, the food of a farmer, person whose intentions are honest, a person takes pleasure in cow protection, and one who is a barber can be accepted. Okay. One can pay the proper price and buy sweet rice, ghee, oil, cow's milk, powdered spices, sesame cake, and sesame seeds from Shudras and not be adversely affected. Okay, so here it's also describing certain foods, and we can say in general, if you pay for something, it's considered to be purifying the thing because the person takes the money, and therefore you're taking the ingredient from them. You're buying the ingredient from that person or from that company or from that farmer, like that, and therefore you've made a trade for money, but you don't have to accept the karma, is what it's saying. You don't have to share in the simple reaction of that person. So now, according to a sage called Angira, right, in text 268, it says one can accept milk, grains, oil, milk cakes, sesame cakes, and any other milk product from a Shudra and eat it. And of course, if we accept these things, we should, if they're pure things, we should offer these things like that. So normally here, it's not saying whether these things are cooked or not cooked. In general, in the Shmiti Shastras, the higher classes are not accepting these things if they're cooked from the lower classes. In Atri Shmiti, in text 269, it says, one who eats food that was bought by the earnings of his daughter eats stool. Okay? If one eats food given by a king, he will next be born as a worm in stool. So the idea here is that one should not live by the earnings of one's children. One should provide for one's children, and even when they grow up, continue to provide for them, even though they've left the house or they have a different family. So, if one, so it also could be here that this rule here about living from the earnings of the daughter especially if the daughter's grown up. The daughter's grown up and she's joined another family, so we shouldn't be taking we shouldn't be living off food which is or anything that comes from the earnings of the daughter because she's moved to another family. That could also be it. If one eats food given by a king, so the king offers to give us food, then he'll be born as a worm in store. This is sort of difficult thing to understand, not exactly understanding what it means. But in other words, you become obliged to a king. You certainly do become obliged to anybody who feeds you. We have for example, in the Mahabharata, we have the example of Bhishma Dev, who lived in the palace of the Kauravas, and who was eating their food and was supplied with food from them, and he felt obliged to them, and therefore he commanded the army of Duryodhana against Lord Krishna and Arjuna and the Pandavas. So it was only after the blood was drained from his body by lying on the bed of arrows, all the blood drained out of his body, that he was able to speak about Dharma. He's a great Mahajan, Bhishma, so he's able to speak about Dharma, but he could not speak about Dharma as long as he was contaminated by eating the food of the Kauravas. So that food turns into blood. So when that blood was gone, that was made from that food of the Kauravas, he was then able to speak about Dharma. So continuing on with text 270, elsewhere it said, among Shudras, one can accept food from a barber, a protector of cows, a friend, a family friend, or a friend of the family, let's say, and a person who distributes his wealth. One can also eat food from a Shudra who has surrendered himself to the Lord in devotional service. So a Shudra who's a Vaishnava. Right. Text 271. If honey, water, fruit, roots, wood, or a gesture of fearlessness come of their own accord without being solicited, one can accept them, even if offered by a low-class person. Right. Okay. Text 272. There is no fault in accepting milk from a pasture, water from a well or lake, and rice paddy from a field under cultivation, even if they belong to inferior people. So remember, one of the ways to earn a living is to go to the fields after the fields have been harvested and collect the rice or the wheat that's still left in the field after it's been harvested, like that. So here it's just talking about accepting milk, accepting water from a lake or well, accepting rice paddy from a field under cultivation, right? Even if those places belong to inferior people, right? These things can be accepted. Continuing on, one should not directly accept water, sweet rice, cooked food, ghee, or salt from a Shudra. Now we can take this also again to mean non-Vaishnava. If one does so, he incurs sin of eating cow's meat. In other words, one should not accept these things directly from the hands of a Shudra. Okay, so sometimes people will make these sort of declarations and they'll say you shouldn't directly take something from the hands of somebody. So you have to do it in a certain way so that it doesn't directly come from the person's hands. Okay, that's just, to me, that's not acceptable. That's just a simply cheating way of getting around this point. But the point here is that we should think about these things in terms of non-devotees. We should not accept water, sweet rice, cooked food, ghee, salt, whatever, or all these things directly from non-devotees. So in Manu Smriti, here's the most famous of the Smriti Shastras is Manu, like that. And again, it deals with the material Varnashram social system. So let's see what Manu has to say in text 274 to 276 about this. However, salt made by evaporating ocean water and Saindava salt, and Saindava salt, I'm not exactly sure the difference, but maybe it means rock salt. But let's see. Let me just look it up in the dictionary and see if it's mentioned there. Saindava means relating to the sea, oceanic, marine, aquatic. So it also could mean a particular type of rock salt found in Sind, or any type of salt. Okay. So, however, salt made from evaporating ocean water or Saindava salt. Saindava can mean, exactly what it means here, we don't know, but it could mean any type of salt. It could also mean a type of rock salt, right? Are always considered pure and can therefore be accepted directly from anyone. Now, what other kinds of salt are there, but rock salt or sea salt? I don't know. I'm not an expert in salt, but, apparently they're saying that these types of salt are okay. Eating food on an iron plate amounts to eating stool. So we shouldn't use an iron plate. Now, today, of course, we use stainless steel or steel plates. We also use other types of plates. But here is specifically talking about iron plates. Now, whether there's a reason for this, whether they used to use iron or whether the iron used to deteriorate or rust or react with the food, we don't know. We don't know the reason exactly for this. One who gives such a plate of food goes to hell as a result. So because you shouldn't eat from this plate, similarly, you should not also give other people food on a plate like this. One should deal with brahmanas who engage in cow protection, business, weaving, serving others, and earning money by means of investment, just as one deals with shudras, right? So here, Manu, this is from Manu, right? Is this from Manu? Yeah, Manu Shruti. So here, Manu Shruti, we could look it up and see if there's a different translation in some of the more recent translations of Manu Shruti. I recommend the critical edition of Manu Shruti which is translated by Patrick Olivelle. If anybody wants that, it's available in PDF format with all the variations in the readings, with the commentaries also in Sanskrit. If you're going to study Manusmriti. Okay, so one who deals with brahmanas. Now, if there are brahmanas who are engaging in cow protection, in business, in weaving, in serving others, or in earning money by means of investment, right? You should deal with them just like the sutras, because these activities that they're talking about here, right, are not meant to be the way that a brahmana earns his living. Because remember what we said, yajini yajita patira patira dana pratikriya. These are the ways in which a brahman is supposed to earn his living. So these rules are more important if you live in a society where it's very class oriented, and the different classes specifically, engage in particular duties, and not in a society which is more of a pluralistic society, which we have all over the world today, where people do invest in different, for instance, there might be somebody who's acting as a brahmana or a priest or something like that. He may have some cows. He may engage in cow protection. Certainly if we read in the scriptures many times that somebody is supposed to give in charity to the Brahmin. So if I give a cow in charity to the Brahmin, isn't he supposed to keep that cow and protect that cow? So why does that make the Brahmin less of a Brahmin? Why do I have to then treat him as a Shudra after I've given him a cow? If he performs some business, depending on what the business is, if he does some weaving, we've seen Brahmins, at least what they do is they make the sacred threads. They do engage in making threads and things like that. Maybe weaving is a thing which some Brahmins may take up. Serving others. is not a thing which normally the Brahmins do. Normally the Brahmins try to keep independent. Again, the Brahmin is a class in society, normally the intellectual class, meant to be the teachers or the priests or both. Right, and earning money by means of investment. Exactly what's meant by investment here, we don't know. But if there's many forms of passive investment today, where a Brahmana is not really involved in that, but he's just whatever excess money he has, he's putting it into a particular investment, and it gains money like that. So these rules and regulations are much more important for people who are following very strictly a very caste or class-based society, which is following all the rules of varnashram. And specifically, Vaishnavas might find themselves above these rules. Right? They might not be following all of these rules perfectly. Okay, so then continuing on, text 277 to 278 in the Prana, it's also said, a wise person should never hesitate to collect grass, wood, fruit, and flowers for the sake of a religious performance. By avoiding such activity, one will be considered degraded. Okay, so what it's saying is that a person should himself go and he should pick the flowers, pick the tulsi leaves, get the wood, get the fruit, get the durva grass, the sacred grass, in order to perform religious ceremonies himself. And he shouldn't avoid that and just simply pay other people to supply all these things. That's the best thing. But of course, it may not be practical. It may be practical to go to the market and buy the flowers, even buy the tulsi. In Sri Rangam, for instance, in big temples, in big city temples, people who don't own flower gardens or tulsi gardens, they go to a flower shop or a tulsi shop and they purchase these things. You can go and you can purchase bundles of sticks, which are specially been cut and bundled up, especially for offering the particular ritualistic fire ceremonies that you have to perform. So all of these things are already prepackaged in some societies. But what it's saying is that the best thing is to go and collect these things yourself. But if you can't do that, then that second class thing is to go and to purchase these things in the market. Oh, Brahmanas, a hungry traveler should beg sesame seeds, mung dal, right? Barley, and other such food from anyone he happens to meet, but only a handful from each person. This is the arrangement laid down by the compilers of religious principles, the Smriti, in the Smriti Shastras, the Dharma Shastras. So the idea is that if you are hungry or if you need food or something like that, you can go and beg. And this is a system which is called Madhukari or Uchavriti. In South India, it's called Uchavriti. North India, it's called Madhukari. Madhukari means going in like a bee to each flower and taking just a little bit of pollen to make nectar. And Uchavriti is, the system of begging alms and going around and accepting just a small amount from each person and not accepting a full meal from any one person. And normally the idea would be to accept uncooked foodstuffs or grains, specifically rice, and cooking it later on yourself and offering it to the Lord. So here it says here in 279, however, a Vaishnava, see here, we get the contrast between a Vaishnava and an ordinary person in ordinary Varnashram system, the ordinary Varnashram system. A Vaishnava can always ask for food from another Vaishnava and eat it without hesitation, right? So this is normal. This is a very normal way of writing here by the Goswamis, is that they will, first of all, they'll lay out all the different quotes from the Smriti Shastras and different scriptures. And then whenever Vaishnavism supersedes these instructions of the Dharma Shastras, they'll point it out. So although there are all these quotes that we just went through about not accepting things from certain brahmanas who have certain what are considered low-class professions, or from Shudras, or from people of lower castes or classes, right? Still, here it says a Vaishnava can always accept food from another Vaishnava. Why? Because even if that Vaishnava is of a lower class, that Vaishnava, social class, I'm talking about, a lower social class, not spiritual class, but spiritually, they're all Vaishnavas, right? And there are different, of course, there may be different levels of spirituality also. Somebody may be more spiritual than another person, but that's another thing. Here we're talking about material classes and how the difference between a Vaishnava and a non-Vaishnava in terms of Varnashram system. So here we have Vaishnava can always accept food from another Vaishnava, even if he's from a lower social class, right? That Vaishnava is going to prepare sattvic food and offer it to Lord Vishnu or Krishna. That will become Krishna Prasadam, and therefore a Vaishnava can accept that. A Vaishnava can, and not any other Vaishnava, even if he's from a higher social class, can accept that. So, on the other hand, he should never ask food from a non-devotee Brahmana, considering it to be abominable. So even a Shudra, even a Vaishnava who's coming from a low class, a Shudra or Malecha background, right, should not eat the food of Brahmins who are not Vaishnavas. Because those Brahmins who are not Vaishnavas, right, they won't be properly offering the food. You know, they don't have the devotion to the Lord to offer the food, to have the food accepted by the Lord. And therefore the Lord doesn't bless them with prasadam, and they don't also have the reverence for the Lord's prasadam that the Vaishnavas have, or the proper understanding, and therefore we should not accept their food. Even though a person might be a pure vegetarian, he might be a very high class person in socially, but if he's not a Vaishnava, we don't accept his food. We consider it abominable. Okay, so now 280. Text 280, there's a conversation between Devaduta and Vikundala, recorded in the Padma Purana. I think we've quoted this conversation between these two before. It says here, to avoid any kind of sinful reaction, a learned person should respectfully beg food from a Vaishnava and eat it, right? And specifically here we have, in the ablative case here, we have Vaishnavad or Vaishnavat Annam. Vaishnavad Annam. So Vaishnavad Annam, food from a Vaishnava. Vaishnavad means from a Vaishnava, right? Vaishnavad Annam. So to avoid simple reaction, one should do that. One should beg, if he's going to beg for food, he should beg from a Vaishnava and eat that. If he cannot get any food in this way, he should at least ask for some water and drink it. So when somebody's very hungry, right, or somebody is in need of food, he should try to get his food from Vaishnavas, like that. If he doesn't have his own food, like that, he can take it from Vaishnavas. If he can't get that, at least he gets some water from the Vaishnavas. 281, and this is coming from Padma Purana. Now from Narada Purana it says, even the most simple person can go to the house of a Vaishnava and beg nectarian food from him. If one cannot collect any food in this way, he should at least ask for some water to drink it. So this is just confirming exactly what was said in Padma Purana, is mentioned here in Narada Purana. Now again, text 282 and Vishnu Shmriti, right? There are different Shmriti Shastras. We quoted from Manu. Now we're going to hear from Vishnu Shmriti, right? Just as the fire of burning rice paddy husk purifies gold, food accepted from a person who knows the actual purport of the Vedas, that means he must be a Vaishnava, basically. If he knows the actual purport of the Vedas, he must be a Vaishnava, right? Because those who are not Vaishnavas, they don't know the actual purport of the Vedas. Food from a Vaishnava and ghee that is left over from a fire sacrifice destroy all of one's simple reactions when consumed. Okay, so it's giving an analogy here that people get rice husks So rice comes in a husk, and when it isn't, when we just cut the rice in the field or cultivate the field and then harvest the rice. When we have harvested rice, freshly harvested rice, it's what we call paddy. It has this covering on it that has to be taken off. It has to be crushed, and the rice grain inside has to be taken out. Right. So the rice, it has to be threshed. So the rice grain inside comes out, and then we have, when we're left with the shell, the external shell, that is used by people, especially by in gold and silver workers in India. They build a little fire in order to heat the gold and to manipulate the gold and the silver, right, out of this paddy, rice paddy, right, just the husk of the rice paddy that's left over after the grain has been taken out. And it's a very good fire, and it helps to purify the gold. Okay, so just in that same way as that person does that tradesman does that, food accepted from a person who knows the actual purport of the Vedas, a food from a Vaishnava, or food that's been made with ghee that's left over from a fire ceremony, from a sacrificial oblations, right? This type of food is considered pure. Text 283, 284 in the Skanda Purana, Markandeya and Bhagirata have a conversation, and they say, Ganges water, Ganga water, the heart of a devotee of Lord Vishnu, the vow of Ekadasi, and food given by a devotee of the Lord are always sanctified. If by mistake one eats at the house of a non-devotee, he should purify himself by following the vow of Chandrayana. Otherwise, all of his worship and charity are in vain. Okay, so here's the point. This Chandrayana fasting, we talked about it before. Chandrayana fasting is fasting according to the phase of the moon. And we described it before that normally you start on the day after Purnima, or on the Purnima on the full moon, and we'll decrease our eating from 15 handfuls or mouthfuls down to 1 mouthful and 0 mouthful on the Amavasya day or the new moon day. And then again, that's in the waning period of the month. And then in the waxing period again of the month, we will increase again from 1 to 15 handfuls or mouthfuls of food. So this takes a whole month to do. So here it's very interesting. What he's saying is that this quotation from Skanda Purana says that if by mistake somehow you eat at the house of a non-devotee, you should therefore purify yourself by doing this Chandrayana fast. It's a very serious thing. It's considered a serious thing. So here, Prahlad has said, right, and we don't know whether this is also coming from Skanda Purana, but in any case, Prahlad, Bhakti Prahlad or Prahlad Maharaj is a Mahajana. He's a great devotee of Lord Vishnu. And therefore he has said in this regard, O king, one should never eat food from a person's house where there is no deity of Lord Krishna. Indeed, such food must be considered uneatable, or actually the word in English is usually inedible. So he's written here uneatable. Okay, we understand what he means. Now, in the word Lord Krishna is not actually, the name Krishna is not actually given in the Sanskrit here, but it says Keshavarcha. It means the deity of Keshava, the deity of Lord Vishnu. Krishna or Rama, any of the forms of Lord Vishnu, any form of the Lord, any Vishnu Tattva form. If there's a house which doesn't have a deity like this, therefore we should not eat in food of somebody's house when they don't have a deity like this. Because it means that if they don't have a deity form of the Lord, they haven't offered the food. Right? That's what it usually means. So, 286, here he says, some experienced devotees who are faithful to the chanting of their mantras advise that one should have full faith in the Supreme Lord while endeavoring to earn one's livelihood, his livelihood. by means of teaching others and continuing to chant the holy names of the Lord. Nice. So people should have full faith that they can make their livelihood by simply teaching others. And this is for Brahmanas specifically and Vaishnavas in general, right? Should try to teach others about, and also by continuing to chant the holy names. Of course, it's not recommended that people should make a living out of chanting the holy names, right? It's not that we perform any ritualistic activities like an ordinary job for a salary, but we should doing it, and people should donate to the Vaishnavas who are teaching others, charity should be given to these persons who are chanting the holy name and spreading the chanting of the holy name and teaching others the Vaishnava scriptures. Okay, so now somehow or other, all that we've done here at Hari Bhakti Vilas since the third Vilas, because remember the first Vilas was searching for a guru, second Vilas was taking initiation. So from the third Vilas onwards, we were beginning to do things in a way. We were looking at the daily activities of the Vaishnava. Further on in Hari Bhakti Vilas, we're going to hear about the duties of a Vaishnava in different months. But here we're still talking about the daily activities of Vaishnavas, right? And so here, this section starts off. It says, "Ata madhyanika krityani." So what are the noon duties? The duties in the middle of the day. So up until this point, we've done all these duties in the morning, including trying to earn one's livelihood and teaching people, and then we come to the noon duties. So again, it's the beginning of a section, a new section. So it talks about, it says ata madhyanika. Anika means a day. Madhyanika means the middle of the day. So krityani means our activities or duties, right? So here we're going to talk about duties. So one should collect flowers and other paraphernalia before his noon bath, right? So here, there's two things in this first sentence. First of all, we should be taking bath again in the noon time, and second of all, before that, we should also collect flowers and other paraphernalia. Seemingly that there are going to be some duties at noon or some worship that's going to happen after the noon bath. So that's why we have to collect these ingredients. This is called, again, upadana. So abhigamana, upadana, ija, swadhyaya, and yoga. These are the 5 sections of the day, which mean getting up and getting ourselves prepared by taking bath and dressing and everything. It's collecting items and samagris, ingredients for worship, ritualistic worship, doing that worship of the Lord. Right, swadhyaya means studying the scriptures or teaching them, right? And then yoga means a meditation on the Lord, and then passing off into night and sleeping, thinking while meditating that when his head is on the foot of the Lord and meditating like this. This is how Vaishnavas go to sleep. So one should collect flowers and other paraphernalia before his noon bath, either after personally collecting flowers, or else engaging someone else to collect them. One should perform his noon duties. Okay, so here it's going to talk about what the noon duties are. Text 288. If one's unable to bathe at noon, he should do so by chanting mantras as described earlier. So earlier that we had some quote from the Shmiti Shastras which talked about there are these 7 types of baths, and I think 7, maybe 8, I'm not sure. And, one of the ways that we can take bath, even if we don't take a full Varuna Shnan with water and a ritualistic bath with water and mantras, we can simply use mantras and sprinkle water on ourselves, or just by chanting the holy name or by thinking about Lord Krishna, we become purified. Or chanting different mantras like Agamarshana mantras and different mantras that we know from Sandhya, we become purified. So if one is unable to bathe at noon, he should do so by chanting mantras, right? And it doesn't exactly mention the exact mantras here, but we do know some procedures for that already. Thereafter, he should engage in the worship of the Supreme Lord, following the rules and regulations as prescribed for worship, that is, performed, that worship that is performed in the morning. So so there is morning worship, and here he's talking about again we have to do worship. So that's nice after noontime. The process of offering the Lord's remnants to Vaishnava and others. Okay, so now here's the next topic is about the Vaishnava Deva. It's also called the Pancha Mahayagya, right? That we are born into this world and we have debts to the demigods, we have debts to the rishis, we have debts to our parents, we have debts to other living beings. We have so many debts that we incur just by being born in this material world. In order to discharge those debts and to come to pay back those debts, we have to perform what is called the Vaishnava. This is especially for grihastas and anybody who wants to know how to do this in a very step-by-step manner, then we can talk about it some other time. But here he's going to give an overview of what Vaishnava is. The process of offering the Lord's remnants, right? Remember, we've worshipped the Lord both in the morning and at noon, and now we have the prasadam of the Lord, and we're going to offer it to Vaishnava, which means all the devatas and all the rishis and all different people, different personalities, other living beings, etc. So, thereafter, this is before taking the noon meal, right, which is the main meal of the day. Thereafter, a Vaishnava should please the demigods, such as the Vaishnava and the forefathers, right? It also says Paitram here, which means the forefathers, right, by offering them Krishna's remnants of food, Krishna Prasad. Text 290 to 292, it said, in the sixth part of the day, right? So the day is divided into different parts, right? Exactly how they're talking about. Let's have a look at the Sanskrit. It says here, Shaste Dina, okay? In the sixth part of the day. Okay, so it probably talking about some type of nalika or mahurta after sunrise, the sixth part, right? We can also look up that exactly what time of day this is supposed to be performed. Once you perform the 5 great sacrifices. So here in the Sanskrit, it mentions Pancha Maha Yagya is what we're talking about. So these 5 sacrifices are to discharge these debts that we have to other living beings. So these are called Deva Yagya. These are yagyas of sacrifices, right? Deva Yagya, Bhuta Yagya, Pitru Yagya, Nri Yagya, which means to human beings, and Brahma Yagya. Deva Yagya should be performed with a fire sacrifice. Bhuta Yagya should be performed with the ingredients for worship. Pitru Yagya should be performed by feeding Brahmanas. Nri Yagya should be performed by honoring guests and distributing water to them. And Brahma Yagya should be performed by studying the Vedas of Puranas. Right. So these are the Pancha Mahayagyas that have to be done. So, in text 293, these duties are eternal. Right? They're always to be done. They're to be done daily. Okay, so exactly how to perform the Pancha Mahayagyas and the Vaishnava, right? That's not they don't go into this in general because the people who are reading this book, normally Gopal Goswami and Sananda Goswami, they've written this book for people to read. But if a Brahmana reads this book, he is already probably performing these things. And he's been taught these things in his family, so he already knows. For those of you who want to know the exact procedures for performing these things, then we have to go into in detail in some other lesson, some other course, like that. Here, it's going to be described from the Kurma Purana. It says, if a twice-born person has his meal, right, meaning the main meal of the day, which is the noon meal, right, without performing these 5 kinds of sacrifices, in his next life, he'll be born as an animal. Right, so it's very important for twice-born people. What twice-born people means the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, right, the higher castes or the higher classes in the Varnashram society to perform these. Right. Of course, there are some Vaishnavacharyas who have said that Vaishnavas, Vaishnavas have a higher duty simply to worship the Lord, and they don't have a duty to all these other living beings, and therefore their Vaishnava duty to worship the Lord supersedes the worshipping of other devatas or other living beings, Bhuta Yagya, Pitri Yagya, the forefathers, other living beings like the rishis and other human beings, right? Or even to study the Vedas. So text 294 was here. He's talking about Vaishnava Shraddha Vidhi at this point, because he's given also that we should worship the forefathers. So there was a mention of Pitrutarpana, daily Pitrutarpana in the bath section of Hari Bhakti Vilasa, which came before. There was a little bit of a mention here of worship of the Pitris during Vaishvadeva, right, or the Pancha Mahayagyas. And now he's talking about a more extensive worship that has to happen for Vaishnava Shraddha, right? That Shraddha can be performed in the Vedic way. It can also be performed in the Vaishnava way. The Shraddha ceremonies are for the departed souls of relatives, and therefore it's mentioned here how to do this. On the day of performing the Shraddha ceremony, so this is not happening every day, right? But the Pancha Mahayagya happens every day. The Pitrutarpana, perhaps in the ritualistic bath that we take, that happens every day. But here we're talking about another type of offerings to the forefathers, of offering Vishnu Prasadam or Krishna Prasadam to the forefathers, which will happen perhaps once a year on particular dates. There are different dates for performing Tarpana and performing different Shraddhas according to the calendar and also according to the date of the death of a particular person in the family. So on the day of performing the Shraddha, the devotee should first offer food to the Supreme Lord and then perform the Shraddha ceremony with the Lord's remnants. So he's basically, Gopalbhatta and Sanatana Goswami are giving the main principle here that we just talked about Pancha Mahayagya, we talked about Pitru Yagya, we've talked about offering food, offering some worship to the forefathers on a daily basis. Now, what also happens when we offer on an occasional basis, such as once a year when we do the annual Shraddha, or in the case of a person who's died recently, what do we do for the different Masika Shraddhas or the Ekodishta Shraddhas or different Shraddhas that we do throughout the first year of after a person's death. So all of these Shraddhas should be done with Krishna Prasadam. That's the main point here. Any worship of the forefathers we should do. They are also, if we're Vaishnavas, our forefathers, we consider them to be also Vaishnavas, and we offer them Krishna Prasadam or Krishna Prasadam. So in the Shmitis it's stated, in text 295, until the oblations are offered to the forefathers, one should not distribute food that was cooked for them to children, demigods, renunciates, or brahmacharis. Okay, so it's the normal system is that when we do a Shraddha ceremony, right, everybody fasts before the Shraddha ceremony. So we're going to offer the food first to the Supreme Lord, and then we're going to perform the Shraddha ceremony with that food, with prasadam. Until that is finished, until the Shraddha is actually finished, we shouldn't feed other people, right? So sannyasis, brahmacharis, says specifically here, yati nam, brahmachari nam, right? Shishu, babies, right? We should not distribute food to anybody until this is done, until the forefathers have been offered their pinda, or the prasadam, which is offered, the rice ball, prasadam, which is offered to the forefathers. This is in the Shmiti Shastra. So we may see also that there might be, because this particular rule is coming from Shmiti Shastra, therefore there might be some Vaishnavas who neglect this rule, right? Because they might think feeding the Vaishnavas, feeding the sannyasis, is more important, feeding them with prasadam also. But in general, the Shraddha ceremony should go on first. before everybody takes prasadam. Okay, so now text 296. General statements regarding the Shraddha ceremony are certainly overshadowed by statements of the Vedas, Smritis, and Puranas. So what it actually says here is it doesn't actually say mention the Shraddha ceremony here. But what it does say is it gives a hierarchy of scriptures here, right? So, Shruti, Smriti, Puranadi, right? And we've heard this quotation before, Shruti, Smriti, Puranadi, Pancharakshara, Vidam, Vida, Haikantir, Hariya Bhakti. Anyway, we have to understand that everybody should follow the regulations, rules and regulations coming in the Shruti, the Smriti, the Pancharakshara, and the Puranas, etc. Right. But there is a hierarchy also, and what it's saying here is that regarding general statements about Shraddha and about certain other things, right? What we're talking here about samanya vachana. Samanya vachana, right? What is greater? Samanya vachana means general statements. There are general statements in scripture, in some general scriptures. Then there are Vishesha Vachana. There are special statements of the Shruti, the Smriti, and the Puranas, right? These special statements override, right? They override the general statements. So that's just what he's saying here. So in Padma Purana, in text 297, it says, one should use the remnants of Lord Vishnu's food to worship others. Regarding forefathers, the same rule should be applied. By doing so, one can attain unlimited benefit. So we have to offer. Some people, they don't agree. And the Smartas, right, they offer food directly to the forefathers and they don't offer it to Vishnu first. But the Vaishnavas, they'll always offer it to Vishnu first or to Krishna, and then it's Krishna Prasadam, they'll offer it to the forefathers. So now in the Moksha Dharma section, I'm not sure, but I think Moksha Dharma comes in the Mahabharata, but I could be wrong. Moksha Dharma is, I think, a section in the Mahabharata. But anyway, it may be in some Purana. Sage Narada says, by following the rules and regulations prescribed by Surya Dev, which are supported of the Vaishnava rules and regulations, one should first worship the Supreme Lord and then worship the forefathers with the Lord's remnants. So all of these quotations saying the same thing from different places, saying that we should take the remnants of Krishna's prasadam and worship the forefathers. Text 299 from the Brahmanda Purana, it says a similar thing. While performing the Shraddha ceremony, if one offers to the forefathers Lord Hari's Mahaprasadam with tulsi leaves, they will remain pleased for millions of kalpas. So it's very effective to do this. From the Skanda Purana, Lord Shiva says, in text 300 to 303, whatever one offers to Lord Vishnu for the purpose of satisfying the demigods and forefathers should be offered to them as prasad. Whatever one offers to Lord Vishnu for the purpose of satisfying the demigods and forefathers should be offered to them as prasad, right? So we should take Krishna prasad and offer it to the demigods, to the forefathers. Whenever we have to worship a demigod or a devata or a pitri or an ancestor, we should use Krishna prasad to offer them. The forefathers achieve unlimited satisfaction when one offers them oblations of water that was offered to Lord Vishnu. So even the water we should offer should already have been offered to Lord Vishnu. It is the custom to smear sandalwood paste that has been offered to Lord Mukunda on the foreheads of Brahmanas. To please the forefathers, one should offer the Lord's prasad sandalwood paste along with the oblations. So even the sandalwood paste, which we take from the Lord's feet or from the Lord's body, during the process of worshipping the Lord, the old sandalwood paste is removed, or the old sandalwood is removed. That can be used to offer to devatas and to pitris, right, to demigods and forefathers. O king, there is no doubt that by following this procedure, the demigods and forefathers will achieve unlimited satisfaction. So now from the Skanda Purana, Purushottama Kanda, not sure if the Purushottama Kanda is about Purushottama Chetra, which means Jagannath Puri, or it could also be about Purushottama Masa, which is the Adhika Masa, or the intercalendar month, the leap month, which occurs every three and a half years in a lunar calendar. But in any case, there's a section called Purushottama Kanda in Skanda Purana, and this is what it says: if food becomes contaminated due to being grazed upon, grazing on food by low-class people during the time of performing the Shraddha ceremony, one can purify it by sprinkling water with tulsi leaves. Okay, let's have a look at the Sanskrit here. Annam, anadyam Shraddha Kali too. Okay, so it seems like what we're talking about here is if we have food which is prasadam, which is prasadam rice or rice balls, which are offered in the pinda, in the shraddha at the time of shraddha, then we can purify them by purify it if it's somehow contaminated by low class persons, we can purify it with tulsi, sprinkle it with tulsi and water. When food is mixed with the remnants of the Lord's food, it becomes sanctified. Okay, so this is interesting. Tad annam suratam eti Vishnu naivedya mishritam. This is a very important pramana here, and this is followed by some Vaishnavas, like the Ramanuja Vaishnavas. What they'll do is in the case where there's a famine, where there's no food, there's no proper food to offer to the Lord, right? Because there's not enough food even to eat for a person to sustain his life, right? So because there's a famine, so what happens is that there might be some other type of food which is not considered to be high class food, which we normally wouldn't eat, we normally wouldn't offer to the Lord. But in order to sustain a person's life, one has to eat that. The example I was given in South India was ragi. There's a type of thing called buckwheat, or I think ragi is buckwheat. So it may be considered very like a staple thing to eat in some of the Eastern European countries like Russia. But it's considered to be a low-class food in India, a low-class grain. So we don't usually offer this millet or buckwheat or whatever it is to the Lord, right? But we offer first-class grains like wheat and rice. So these other grains, which are not considered very high class, are not offered in normal times. But in case there's a famine, we might have to offer these things. So what we do is, some people do is if they have a little bit of the high class grains like rice and wheat, they offer that, and then after offering that, they have prasadam. They have a little bit of prasadam, but it's not enough to feed everybody. So what they do is they take that and they cook the other low class grains, which are not really offerable to the Lord, and they cook them, and then they mix in some of the Krishna prasadam in there, and it makes everything sanctified. So normally we don't recommend that people should mix prasadam with non-prasadam. But here, what we're saying is that if we have prasadam, Krishna prasadam, and is so holy that if we mix it with other foodstuffs, which we might not offer to the Lord, right? Then people can that becomes sanctified, and people can eat that. That is why Brahmanas always offer the Lord's should always be offered the Lord's remnants as food. If one is serious about pleasing the forefathers, one should offer them oblations or pindas of Mahaprasadam. So anyway, the point here is tad annam sudatam eti Vishnu naivedyam Naivedya Mishritam, mixed with Vishnu Naivedya. Vishnu Naivedya Shesham tu Tasmad Dhyayam Dvijatalam. Okay. So the first two lines of this verse are interesting. That sometimes there's a food which we wouldn't offer normally to the Lord because it's contaminated in some way. We received it from some low-class person or something like that. But we can mix in, if we mix it with Mahaprasada, it becomes sanctified. That's the point. It's a sort of a strange point, but anyway. I gave the example of a famine, when that might happen, when we have some low-class food that has to be mixed in. Okay, so text 306, in the conversation between Brahma and Narada, that is found in the same literature as stated, so the same literature above, which is Skanda Purana. Narada and Brahma are talking, they're saying, O great sage, those who worship Lord Keshava with the purpose of satisfying their forefathers escape the pangs of hellish life and attain liberation. Text 307 to 310, I guess we're continuing on from the same conversation of Brahma and Narada. It says, O exalted sage, glorious are those who in the age of Kali worship Lord Hari for the benefit of their forefathers. They need not go to Gaia normally. After somebody dies to the family, eventually after we have to go and we have to perform the Gaia Shraddha. We have to perform Shraddha at the Vishnu Pada, which is there's a temple of the Lord Hari's, Lord Vishnu's lotus feet. There's some footprints of Vishnu there at Gaia, and we have to offer Shraddha at that place. So they need to go to Gaia. This is what happened with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He actually went to perform his father's Gaia Shraddha, and he went to Gaia, and at that time he met his spiritual master, Ishwarpuri. So if Lord Hari is worshipped for the purpose of benefiting, so they need those persons who are exalted stage. Glorious are those who in the age of Kali worship Lord Hari for the benefit of their forefathers. They need not go to Gaia and offer oblations to the forefathers as a separate endeavor. If Lord Hari is worshipped for the purpose of benefiting a particular person, that person will be delivered from hellish life and can attain and will attain the supreme destination. Those who build a temple of Lord Hari in memory of their forefathers certainly have fulfilled their duty towards them. Right. So now we have a quotation here from the Shruti, from the Vedas themselves or the Upanishads. Right? It says, in the beginning, there was only Lord Narayana and no one else. Right? Eka eva Narayana asit. Nam Brahma. Right? There was no existence of Chaturmukha Brahma, four-headed Brahma. Right? Neme Dhyal Pratidhyal. There was no heavenly planets, no earth. Right? Dhyal means the heavens. And Prithvi means the earth. All of the demigods, Sarve Devaha. There were no demigods. There were Sarve Itaraha, no others. There were no others like human beings, right? And forefathers. Sarve Manushaha, right? Well, Manusha means people, right? Human beings and forefathers subsisted by eating the remnants of Lord Vishnu's. All the demigods, human beings, and forefathers subsisted by eating the remnants of Lord Vishnu's food, right? This is stated in the Vedas. They smelled whatever had been smelled by Lord Vishnu. They drank whatever had been drunk by him. Considering this, learned persons should only eat the remnants of Lord Vishnu's food, of the Lord's food, Krishna's prasadam. Right, so this is a very powerful statement given in the Vedas. So now, 312 to 313, in the Vishnu Dharma, the Supreme Lord has stated, if one is given nice food that was offered to me, his life here will always remain satisfied as a result of honoring my prasad, my mercy, my food remnants. I am situated within the hearts of all living entities as the Paramatma, or the Supreme Soul, the Super Soul. Therefore, one should offer my remnants to the forefathers. So even in the Vishnu Dharma, The Supreme Lord has recommended offering foodstuffs to the forefathers that are first made into Krishna Prasada. Elsewhere in the Vishnu Dharma, it says, the Supreme Lord is the only enjoyer, and so everything should be offered to him and then distributed to the forefathers. One will have to atone for his sin if he offers food directly to the forefathers. So the smarta system of offering food directly to the forefathers is decried here. It's not accepted here. And he's saying that this is sinful. In the beginning of creation, the demigods, or the devatas, ascertained that Lord Vishnu is the foremost enjoyer of everything. Right? Yagyavai Vishnu. Right? So all sacrifice is meant for Vishnu. In turn, the Supreme Lord made arrangement for the demigods to receive their shares of sacrificial offerings. And continuing on, we have a section here now, the glories of feeding Vaishnavas after the Shraddha ceremony. So first of all, we offer the food to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. We get Krishna Prasadam. With the Krishna Prasadam, not just the foodstuffs, but the sandalwood paste, but the water, the tulsi leaves that are offered to the Supreme Lord. We take those things and we use them in the Vaishnava Shraddha ceremonies. And then after the Vaishnava Shraddha ceremonies, we should feed the Vaishnavas. In a typical Shraddha ceremony, right, an annual Shraddha ceremony, the normal system is to call 3 Brahmins and to feed the Brahmins full meals, right, considering that each Brahmin represents a different personality. One Brahmin is Vishnu, one Brahmin represents the forefathers, and one Brahmin represents all of the other devatas. Right? So one for the Pitris, one for the Vaishnavas, and one for Vishnu, one Brahmin. So this is the general system. So in a conversation between Markandeya and Bhagirata, also found in Skanda Purana, it's mentioned. The Shraddha ceremony performed by Brahmanas who feed the so-called knowers of the Vedas while neglecting the Vaishnavas, who may not be very learned in Vedic literature, considering them to be foolish, is considered demoniac. Is considered to be demoniac. If during the Shraddha ceremony, a Vaishnava takes only a morsel of food and a few drops of water, it is to be understood that the performer is given food equal to Mount Sumeru and water equal to an ocean in quantity, right? So here in the Skanda Purana, in this conversation between Markandeya and Bhagirata, what it's saying is, it's saying that first of all, it's saying you should not neglect, you shouldn't do a Shraddha ceremony and just feed ordinary Brahmanas in your Shraddha ceremony. You should actually feed Vaishnavas. And people shouldn't be discouraged. You shouldn't be discouraged from feeding Vaishnavas by somebody saying to you, no, you have to feed Brahmins because only Brahmins can represent the Vaishnava. And we see that, I believe, Haridas Thakur was called to receive food at the Shraddha ceremony, right? Even though Haridas Thakur was born in a Muslim family, he's not a Brahmana, wasn't born in the Brahmin class or caste. But because he was such a great Vaishnava, he could be accepted as being part of the Shraddha ceremony, being fed during the Shraddha ceremony. So in Vaishnava Shraddha ceremonies, we should feed Vaishnavas. It doesn't mean that we can also feed Brahmanas, but if we feed Brahmanas who are also Vaishnavas, that's good. That's the best, right? And this is considered, even if we give a morsel of food or a few drops of water to a Vaishnava in a Shraddha ceremony, it's considered to be equal to offering a huge amount of food, like a mountain of food and an ocean of water. Okay, so in the Brahma Purana, Lord Brahma says, in text 318, at a house of a qualified Vaishnava who decorates his body with the symbols of the conch and the chakra, the different symbols of Vishnu, and other weapons, right, eats, Lord Keshava, along with the forefathers, also enjoys the food, right? So Lord Krishna, right, the Supreme Person, and all the forefathers, they will enjoy their food only if At the house of a qualified Vaishnava who decorates his body with the symbols of the Lord's conch and other weapons, eats. Right. So when a person eats, a Vaishnava eats at this person's house, then Lord Krishna also, he enjoys that food, and the forefathers. Text 319 in the Smriti Shastras, it's also said, the great sage Shatatapa has said that just as nectar kept in a pot used for storing wine is unfit to be drunk and therefore useless, a Shraddha ceremony without the presence of Vaishnavas who are decorated with the symbols of the Lord's chakra and other weapons is totally useless. Right. So even in the Smriti Shastra it says that we should invite Vaishnavas to the Shraddha ceremony. We should make a Vaishnava Shraddha ceremony. In Vishnu Rahasya, it's stated in text 320 here, if a person out of ignorance considers non-devotees to be on the level of devotees who are very dear to the Lord, that lowest of men will fall down to a hellish condition of life. Right? So if a person thinks that he can have a Shraddha ceremony and just invite ordinary Brahmanas who are not Vaishnavas, and that will satisfy the forefathers and satisfy God. It doesn't satisfy them. It's ignorance. To think that non-devotees are to be on the level of devotees who are very dear to the Lord, that lowest man will fall down to a hellish condition of life. It's very good. It's a very good pramana here. Text 320 from Vishnu Rahasya. Right? We should not equate ordinary people, no matter how qualified they appear to be, with Vaishnavas. So we have here prohibitions in this connection. Ata Shri Bhagavadarpanam Nishidam. Remnants refers to that which have been offered to or eaten by someone else. And the word for remnants here is uchistam. Tad uchistam. Tad means that. Uchistam. Uchistam means what is left over or remnants. Remnants refers to that which has been offered to or eaten by someone else. One should never offer others' remnants to the Supreme Lord. Right. So we should always offer first to the Lord. Whatever we offer, we should offer it first to the Lord, and then we can offer the Lord's prasadam to other people, his remnants to other people, not the other way around. Never offer any remnants of anything to the Lord. So that means that which has been offered or eaten by other persons. Text 322. In the Bhagavatam 11th canto, it's mentioned, Api Deepavalokam Me No Payunjan Niveditam. Right. A ghee lamp that was offered to someone else should not be offered to me. This is also very important. People should take note of this. Right. There is a system of offering of things, of all things, of offering prasadam, but here it's talking about a ghee lamp. In the Srimad Bhagavatam it says, don't offer the ghee lamp to anybody else first and then offer it to me. This is stated in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam. It's a very important pramana. People should take notice of this. The ghee lamp should first be offered to the Lord. After it's offered to the Lord, it becomes the Lord's prasadam, and then when we offer it to somebody else, that person will be most pleased. The Vaishnava or demigod or the Lord's consorts or the Lord's attendants will be very, very happy if we offer that lamp to them after offering it to the Lord. Very important pramana. Text 323. In the Narada Purana it says, a person who offers the Supreme Lord remnants of food that were offered to the forefathers, whose forefathers will have, those forefathers will have to drink their own semen and thus suffer great distress. So when a person offers to the Supreme Lord remnants of food that were offered to the forefathers, right? So if you perform a Shraddha ceremony and you offer food directly to the forefathers, and then you take that food and then you try to offer that to the Supreme Lord afterwards, offering remnants of the forefathers to the Supreme Lord, Krishna, right? Then your forefathers are going to be in great distress. So, text 324 from the Vishnu Dharma, it says, by offering the remnants of Lord Hari's food to the forefathers, right, they obtain unlimited satisfaction. Because Lord Hari is the spiritual master of the demigods, headed by Brahma, one should never offer food to him that has already been offered to the forefathers. This is a big sin. So, text 325. Elsewhere it said, the demigods headed by Indra, the forefathers headed by Daksha, are all servants of Lord Vishnu. Therefore, their remnants of food should never be offered to Lord Vishnu. And text 326 says, after completing all of one's religious and practical duties, one should then first distribute the Lord's remnants of food to the Vaishnavas. Then, in the association of his friends and relatives, he can sit down and honor prasadam. This is a standard etiquette, is that after everything is finished, first of all, one should distribute prasadam, and then one can take prasadam for oneself and one's family. That's a standard etiquette. In the Narada Pancharatra, it mentions, one should always distribute to the Vaishnavas the food that has been offered to Lord Hari. It is all right to give unoffered food to karmis and non-devotees, but if prasad is unavailable. Okay. If you have to feed people and there's no prasadam which is available, you can feed other people with that, but always distribute Vishnu prasadam to the Vaishnavas. In the Vaishnava Tantra, it's mentioned here in text 328, learned devotees should never give Lord Hari's remnants of food to non-Vaishnavas who are simply attached to ritualistic activities and who therefore observe fasting for some ulterior motive on an Ekadasi that is contaminated due to the overlapping of Dwadasi. By doing so, such a non-devotee will go to hell. Okay, so in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's described that Lord Chaitanya, when he's telling Sanatana Goswami how to write Hari Bhakti Vilasa, he's saying that you have to describe, and later on we're going to be understanding in the sections 12 and 13 of Vilasa's 12 and 13 of Hari Bhakti Vilasa talks about Ekadasi. And so there's different types of Ekadasi. There's what is pure Ekadasi, which is called Shuddha Ekadasi. And there's Mishra Ekadasi, there's mixed Ekadasi. So a mixed Ekadasi is when the Dasami, or the 10th day and the 11th day of the moon, overlap in some way. And therefore, what usually happens is that Vaishnavas observe the next day. So sometimes what happens in a lunar calendar is that a day, because the day is marked, the whole day is marked on the calendar according to the time, the lunar time at the time of sunrise. So let's say that the Ekadasi or the Dasami, the 10th day, exists for only 5 minutes after sunrise, and then the Ekadasi comes in, the 11th day comes in. The whole of that day up to the next day, right, will be Ekadasi, and then maybe some of the next day, or maybe not some of the next day, is Ekadasi. If the Ekadasi Tithi, or the lunar day of Ekadasi, is completely run out, and the next day sunrise is Dwadasi, right, then that means you'll have a Dasami followed by a Dwadasi, right? If you have a Dasami followed by a Dwadasi, we call that a Mahadwadasi, and we observe the fasting on the Mahadwadasi. Similarly, there's a system where the Ekadasi and the Dasami can be mixed, and that would mean that we have to perform, there might be 2 Ekadasis listed on the calendar. The second one is the one which the Vaishnavas will fast on. Now, the point here being made is that there are people who are smarters who will fast on the first day of those two Ekadasi days, coming one after the other, right? And that is not the Vaishnava system. And also these people, usually, even if they're fasting on Ekadasi, they're doing it for some materialistic purpose. In the scriptures, in the Puranas, it mentions different fruits that one can get by fasting on Ekadasi, and not all of them are simply, liberation and, and service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. There are some other fruits that people are aspiring for. So some people are, if they want children, they want wealth, they want long life, they want freedom from disease. These are all materialistic things that people want, right? And they may, fast on Ekadasi in order to get those. Those people are not considered to be, at least even if they're Vaishnavas, they're considered to be low-class Vaishnavas, but mostly they're considered to be smartas. They're not Vaishnavas. So, learned devotee should not give up Lord Hari's remnants of food, not give Lord Hari's remnants of food to non-Vaishnavas, who are simply attached to ritualistic activities and who therefore observe fast with an ulterior motive on Ekadasi, that is contaminated due to overlapping of dasami. By doing so, such non-devotees will go to hell. So it's saying here that we shouldn't give the remnants of food of Lord Krishna's prasadam to such persons like that. However, a Vaishnava may also be very compassionate and may still give them Krishna prasadam. Vishnu Damodara, it's just more or less this verse is not a rule for devotees to not give other people Krishna prasadam, but more the rule which is being the point which is being made here in this sloka, in this verse, is that there are some people who are not Vaishnavas, they're smartas or they're very low class Vaishnavas, and they fast on Ekadasi on the wrong date, right, for an ulterior motive, and those persons will go to hell for doing that. So, in Vishnu Dharmottara in text 329, it said, "O greatly fortunate one, Lord Keshava is pleased with a person who does not distribute to the non-devotees the remnants of food and flowers that were offered to the demigods." So, Lord Krishna is pleased with a person who does not distribute to non-devotees the remnants of food and flowers that were offered to demigods. So if there's prasadam, if there's food offerings or flower offerings that were offered to other devatas, right? Vaishnavas should not give that type of prasadam, which is not really prasadam, it's just food offered to devatas, right? Should not give that to other persons. And the Lord will be happy with people who don't do that. So a Vaishnava should not eat anything without first offering it to the Lord Krishna. He should not eat even a tiny portion of food that is meant to be offered to the Lord. It's a very important pramanam here. And these pramanams are coming from Vishnu Dharmottara. These proofs. The fault of eating food without worshipping Lord Krishna. So what is the fault of eating food? Before we worship, before we offer it to the Lord. So it says here, Ata puja vakya tirikta bhojana doshaha. Doshaha means faults. Faults. Bhojana doshaha. Faults of eating. For those impious souls who eat without first worshipping Lord Govinda, all of their food is considered as no better than dog's stool. And whatever they drink is considered no better than wine. So this is normally why we get up and we do our puja first thing, and we don't eat or drink anything. Many people don't even drink before they eat it, before they do puja. They offer food to the Lord. Text 332. Due to laziness or illusion, if a person eats first without first worshipping the Lord Hari, he will go to hell and then be born in this world as a pig. In the Vishnu Dharmottara, it's said in text 333, it's the duty of a person to worship Lord Hari either once, twice, or thrice, 3 times a day. After having one's meal without first worshipping the Lord, by having one's meal meaning the noonday meal, right? The main meal, right? Normally in the ancient system, there were two meals in the day. The first was the like a brunch type of noonday meal, which was done after the worship was done, which is normally afternoon, right? After the noon dietary and the noon worship, right? And the Vaishnava, right? And then there will be another meal in the evening, early evening or later evening. By having one's meal first, by having one's meal without first worshipping the Lord, one paves his way to hell. Now, in Narada Purana, in text 334 to 336, it also says, learned authorities have recommended that one should worship Lord Hari in the morning, at noon, and in the evening. If one is unable to worship the Lord elaborately 3 times a day, he should worship him properly in the morning, and then simply by offer flowers at noon and in the evening. At noon, he should also offer varieties of food to Lord Hari and then partake of the prasada, the remnants. By avoiding the worship of the Lord in this way, one degrades himself to a hellish condition of life. So now we're going to hear some prohibitions with regard to Ata Anarpita Bhoga Nishedaha. Right. So it mentions here in the Hayashesha Pancharatra, it says, it is prohibited to eat without first worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Hari. One should avoid eating anything that has not been offered to Lord Vishnu. Continuing on with text 338 to 339, Brahmanda Purana says, one should not drink anything, nor should one eat leaves, fruit, flowers, food grains, or even medicinal herbs without first offering them to Lord Hari. If one eats food that has not been offered to the Lord, he must undergo atonement. Therefore, in all circumstances, one should first offer food to the Lord before eating. Continuing on, a conversation in Padma Purana between Gautama and King Ambarish says, O Emperor, if one does not offer all the food he cooks to Lord Hari, but instead simply eats it, he will have to suffer the torments of hell for 7 kalpas. Text 334. In the Padma Purana Uttarakhanda, a conversation between Shiva and Parvati, it said, food served in the houses of fallen and wretched people and non-devotees in general, and food that has been offered has not been offered to Lord Vishnu, are considered to be on the level of dog meat. In the Vishnu Smriti, it said, the forefathers of a person who enjoys his meal first, without first offering the food to the super soul Lord Hari, perpetually rot in hell. So even your forefathers, not just yourself, but also your forefathers will rot in hell. Text 343, in a conversation between Gautama and Ambarisha in Padma Purana, it stated, O Ambarish Maharaj, Vaishnavas should offer everything, including new clothes, flowers, fruit, cooked foods, and drinks to the Supreme Lord, and then accept his remnants. So even when you get new clothes. Right. Now, in the Vishnu Dharma and the Agni Purana, it's also stated, saintly persons first offer to Lord Vishnu everything they use, including palatable food, sweets, sandalwood paste, flower garlands, clothes, and ornaments, and they honor his remnants. So everything's offered to the Supreme Lord. So continuing on with text 345 from Garuda Purana, it says, the Vedic literature has instructed everyone to regularly drink the water that has washed the lotus feet of Lord Hari, honor the remnants of Lord Hari's food, and touch to his head the tulsi leaves that are offered to the Lord. Continuing in the 6th canto of the Bhagavatam, 6:19-20, this verse is found regarding the conception of a child. Thereafter, Lord Vishnu should be laid in his bed, and then one should take prasad. Right? In this way, husband and wife will be purified and will have all their desires fulfilled. Continuing on, text 347. In the 8th canto of the Bhagavatam, 8:1641, it's stated, one should offer all the prasad to a Vaishnava or offer him some of the prasad and take some oneself. In the Gautamiya Tantra, it's stated, every day one should collect fresh ingredients and then worship Lord Hari. After offering food to Lord Krishna, while following the prescribed rules and regulations, one should honor the Lord's remnants and distribute them to the Vaishnavas and guests with love and devotion. Text 349. From Sharat Pradipa, it's stated, festivals celebrated by the devotees are centered around Lord Vishnu. One can remain at home and constantly remember the Supreme Lord, engage in his devotional service, and offer him one's favorite food. Serving the Lord in this way enables one to go to Vaikuntha, which is rarely attained, even by the demigods such as Indra. So now we're going to have the process of accepting the Lord's remnants, the process of taking prasadam. Right. Ata naivedya bhakshana vidihi, the vidhi. So, as soon as one sees Mahaprasada, one should offer obeisances to it and honor it by chanting the Gayatri mantra. In the Sanskrit here, it says, Drishtva Mahaprasadanam, right? By having seen the Mahaprasadam of the Lord, right? Annam, the cooked rice, Mahaprasadam of the Lord. Tat pranat vabi mantrayet. One should offer obeisances to it, right? I guess with mantra. Shveshta nam na tato mulam anna varasaptakam. Then one should chant the Mula mantra 7 times over the Mahaprasadam. So, first of all, we should see the Lord's prasadam. We should offer our obeisances to the Mahaprasadam, right? I'm not sure where he gets this idea of Gayatri mantra. But anyway, one should chant the Mula mantra. Mula mantra in this case is the Astila Sachara Gopal, 18-syllable Gopal mantra, 7 times over the Mahaprasadam. Then it says, text 351, from the Mahaprasadam, one should take out a portion and with tulsi leaves and water that wash the Lord's lotus feet, make an offering to Dharmaraja and others while reciting these verses. Okay, so there's a system of taking Mahaprasadam, and I've seen this, especially the Madhva Vaishnavas do this. They offer to Chitraya Namaha, Chitraguptaya Namaha, Yamaya Namaha, Sarvabhutaya Namaha. They offer 4 little mounds of rice on the side of the plate, right, for Chitra, Chitragupta, Yamaraj, and all of the different bhutas, all of the different living beings, like that. So Chitraya Namaha, Chitraguptaya Namaha, Yamaya Namaha, Sarvabhutaya Namaha. Here is a similar sort of thing. Gaudiya Vaishnavas are supposed to do. They take a small part of the Mahaprasadam, the tulsi leaves and water, right? And they offer it to Dharmaraj, means Yamaraj, right? While reciting these verses. Okay, so here we're getting some verses, right? We honor Lord Hari's remnants of food, which are sought after with great respect by the maintainers of the living entities, such as the siddhas and the demigods headed by Lord Brahma. Yasyochistam hivanchanti brahmadhya rishayo malaha. This is a spelling mistake here. There should be no I after a ri. Rishayo malaha. Siddhadyascha hareshtasya vayam uchista bhojinaha. Text 353 to 354, it says, we honor the remnants of Lord Krishna, whose holy names destroy all sinful reactions. We take great pleasure in relishing the remnants of Lord Krishna, who in his childhood had effortlessly killed the witch Putana and performed many other wonderful pastimes. So, this is, we can chant this. Yasya namna vinashanti mahapataka rashayaha. Tasya Sri Krishna devasya vayam uchista bhojinaha. Uchista bhojanastasya vayam adbhata kamanaha. Yobalya lilaya tam stan. Putanadina patayat. Okay, so these are three verses that are chanted. Right. So then it says, according to the Bhagavatam, in text 355, accordingly in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, 11.646, it's stated, simply by decorating ourselves with garlands, fragrant oils, clothes, and ornaments that you have already enjoyed, and by eating the remnants of your meals, we, the servants, will indeed conquer your illusory energy. Continuing on. Bali Danam is a different thing. Bali Danam we're offering around the temple to different devatas, but this is a type of Danam that we're offering specifically before we honor the Mahaprasadam. It could, the Vaishnava is also a type of Bali Danam. There's different things that we did when we offered the Lord food in the ritualistic worship. Right after we did that, we offered some to Vishvaksena and also to other devatas, right? And here we're doing it again. We're doing it again when we actually take prasadam, right? So during the Vaishnava and during the Panchamahayagya, and now also after that, when we take prasadam, we're also doing it again. So thereafter, one should offer oblations to the Pancha Pranas while reciting the mantra, beginning with Amrito Pastaramasi, and then honor the Lord's remnants outside the deity room. It is absolutely prohibited to eat anything inside the deity room. Okay, so we're talking here about doing Brahma Bhojanam, right, or Bhojana Vidhi, in which you first of all have to sip some water. Amrito Pastaramasi, you have to sip water, and you have to keep that water for as a place washing the inside of the body with the spiritual water, with the mantra Om Amrito Pastaramasi, and then you have to offer prana hutis. You have to offer 5 oblations into the fire of digestion, Vaishvana, which Krishna represents the fire of digestion, and we have to take 5 small grains of rice and offer them into the mouth. Om Pranaya Swaha, Om Apanaya Swaha, Om Yanaya Swaha, Om Mudanaya Swaha, Om Samanaya Swaha. Right? And some people say Om Brahmane Swaha, Brahmaniva Atma Amritatvaya. Right? So some people say Sri Govindaya Namaha at this point. And then, so these oblations are taken with the thumb and ring finger, or thumb and forefinger like that, or thumb and forefinger ring finger taken and thrown into the mouth. Just 1 grain with ghee like that of rice thrown into the mouth and swallowed whole without crushing it with the teeth. Right? This is called Pancha Prana Hutis. Right? And then one can eat the meal, and then after the meal is finished, one has to do what's called Uttara Poshanam. There's Purva Poshanam and Uttara Poshanam. The Purva Poshanam mantra is Om Amrito Pastaramasi, and sips water. And then at the end of the meal, one also sips water to cover the meal, right? Cover the prasadam in the body with the Uttara Poshanam mantra, which is called Amrita Pidanamasi, right? At the end. Amrito Pastaramasi in the beginning, Amrita Pidanamasi at the end. Okay? And then okay, so then this is the method of taking food. And he's just mentioning here that one should not eat inside the deity room. One has to go outside and in a separate place. So, continuing on with 357, text 357 in the Vishnu Purana, in a conversation between Aurva and Sagara. It says, a householder should sit down and honor the Lord's remnants of food in a peaceful and pure and peaceful manner. Text 358, 359 says, one should sit down facing east or north, right? So these are auspicious directions, right? After washing his hands and feet, one should decorate himself with sandalwood paste and flower garland before sitting down to take his meal with a peaceful and satisfied heart. One should not eat while wearing only one piece of cloth. So that one should wear two pieces, at least around the wrapped around the stomach. Right, is the other chadar. Right, one should not eat while wearing only one piece of cloth, facing fire, facing a corner, or looking here and there. Text 360. After distributing food to his disciples, devotees in general, and those who are hungry, a householder should peacefully accept his meal on a suitable plate. Text 361. O Emperor, one should never eat while keeping his plate on a three-legged wooden table. Okay? In a congested or narrow place, or during an inappropriate time, such as early evening. So there are certain times when one should not eat. A small portion of prasad should first be offered into fire. A man should not eat anything, should not eat everything on his plate. Rather, he should leave a small portion of food. Okay, so I'm not exactly sure why that is, but perhaps he should leave some. Let's see further on. 362. After scrutinizing all the food on his plate, such as honey, water, yogurt, ghee, grains, he should eat the sweets first. Okay, so there's many rules about eating. So in some parts of India, they say you should eat sweets first. Some people say you should not eat sweets first. Some people say you should just have one sweet first. Some people say other things should come first, things that are bitter. Like in Bengal, they say that you should eat bitter things first. So there's all sorts of different rules and regulations. Here's one of them. Right. So we follow the system which is best loved by you or accepted in your community. While having his meal, one should eat the salty and sour preparations first, followed by the pungent and bitter preparations. If one first eats some liquid preparation, then eats some solid food, and then once again, at the end, eats some more liquid preparation, he will acquire strength and good health. He should first wash his hands and mouth. Then, while sitting facing east or north, he should have his meal while maintaining silence. After offering a small portion of food to the pancha pranas, and that's also mentioned here, pancha grasa, pranadi, right? So it's mentioned. When finished, one should nicely wash his hands and mouth. Text 366. After eating, one should peacefully relax and meditate on his worshipful Lord. Text 367. One should pray. May the three kinds of fire of digestion properly digest my consumed food. May I achieve happiness as a result of proper digestion, and may my body remain free of disease. Okay, so this is actually, looks like, I don't know where this sloka is coming from, but Agastya Agnir Badavana Vanalascha Bhuktam Mayanam Jarayantvam Yantvachesham Chukancha Metat Harinam Sambhavam Yachchantva Rogam Mama Chastu Dehe. Okay. So continuing on, text 368 says, Vishnu Samastendriya Deha Dehi Pradhana Bhuto Bhagavan Yataikaha Satyena Tenanam Ashesham Etad Arogyadam Me Harinametu. May the power of my conviction that Lord Vishnu is the supreme controller of all senses, bodies, and embodied souls help digest my food and give me good health. So then it says in text 369, after reciting these two mantras, one should massage his belly, his stomach, and give up lethargy by engaging in some light work. In other words, one should avoid hard physical labor after eating. Continuing on from the Vyasa Gita of the Kuma Prana in text 370, it says one should sit on a comfortable asana facing the sun or east, right, which is facing the sun, while keeping both legs on the floor as he has his meal. Text 371. After eating one's meal facing east awards one long duration of life. Facing south gives one fame. Facing west gives wealth. Facing north causes all of one's desires to be fulfilled. Text 372. Prajapati Manu has said that if one has his meal after washing his hands, feet, and mouth, keeping his plate on the floor, he obtains the benefit of fasting. Text 373 to 374. One should wash his feet, hands, and mouth, sit down in a clean place that has been smeared with cow dung, and have his meal with a mind that is free from anger. Before eating, one should chant the Gayatri mantra and then sprinkle some water around his plate while chanting the mantra Amritopastarmasi, which is the Purva Poshana mantra. Right? It's not for sprinkling water, it's for sipping water. And sprinkling water around with the Gayatri mantra, one says Om Bhurva Vasavahari Thore Inyam Bargori Vasidimhi Dyoyana Patori Ate Devasavara Pasuvaha Satam Tatina Parasim Jami Amritopastarmasi Om Prana Yaswaha Om Apana Yaswaha Om Vyana Yaswaha Mudana Yaswaha Om Samana Yaswaha Om Brahmani Swaha Brahmaniva Niva Amritatvaya Om Amrita Shri Govindaya Namaha. When you eat, then Om Amrita Pida Nasi at the end. Okay, so that's the actual system. Anybody wants to learn it, they can get in touch with me, and we can show you videos and mantras and prayers on how to actually do the Brahma Bhojanam. So here, when it says Gayatri mantra, it's meaning for purifying the meal and for doing parisechanam, which means putting water around the plate on the floor so that little ants and other creatures cannot disturb the food. So text 375 to 378 says, thereafter one should offer oblations to the 5 kinds of life air while chanting Om Pranaya Swaha, etc., which I just did. O Brahmanas, one should also offer oblations to himself after understanding all the intricacies of this science. After doing this, one should enjoy his meal as he likes. After eating, one should fix his mind on the Supreme Lord and then wash his hands and mouth while chanting the mantra Amrita Pidhanamasi. Okay, so that's the Uttara Poshana mantra, right? For sipping. When after you sip water and you say this mantra Amrita Pidhanamasi, then you can't eat anymore. Then you're supposed to stand up from eating, finish the meal. So in the Kuma Purana in text 379 to 381, it's mentioned eating while covering one's head, while facing a corner, or while wearing shoes is considered to be demoniac. One should avoid eating in the middle of the night, at noon, when one is suffering from indigestion, while wearing wet clothes, while sitting on a broken chair, while sitting in a vehicle, on a broken plate, or by placing food on the ground without any plate at all, in the palms of one's hand. One should try to avoid all those things. Overeating is a great impediment in the path of good health. It reduces one's duration of life. It hampers one's progress to heaven. It causes one to accumulate sin, and it becomes a cause of public criticism. Therefore, one should refrain from overeating. So, continuing on, text 382, it says one should not drink water by picking up the glass with the left hand. Okay, so this is interesting because actually the exact opposite is what is seen in most Brahminical communities, right? That the water is picked up with the left hand because the left hand is not used for eating the food and touching the food. So because we touch the food with the right hand and we touch the mouth with the right hand, the hand becomes dirty, and therefore we should not touch the cup with that. So we should pick up the glass or the tumbler or the cup, right, the container of water, right, for drinking with the left hand, and we should pour it in the mouth, but we should not touch the mouth with the container, right? We should simply pour the water in like that. So here it says one should not drink water by picking up a glass with the left hand, like that. So that's very, very strange thing to say, because otherwise, how is one going to drink water? One has to pick it up, therefore, with the right hand. That's not. But here it's specifically said, na vamahastena udritya. So this is a very, very strange pramana here. We have to look into it and see exactly why this is being mentioned, or if it comes from any scripture whatsoever. But these are the intricacies of eating. In different communities, they have different ideas. So, text 383 from the Vishnu Smriti, it says, if some water falls on one's plate while drinking water, the food on the plate becomes unfit while eating. For eating. If one eats that food, he must purify himself by following the Chandrayana atonement fast. Text 384 from Markandeya Purana, it says, one should sit down, crossing his legs and keeping his plate just in front of him. One should always eat his meal with attention. Learned people find fault in the food that is eaten by crows, cats, and other animals. Elsewhere it said, in text 385, it is prohibited to drink water without a glass or cup simply by using one's palms. So putting your palms together and drinking water is forbidden. It is also forbidden to drink water directly from a source without holding it in his hand. Okay, I'm not exactly sure what that means. If one keeps his glass of water on the left of his plate rather than the right, his water is considered to be the level of wine and food unfit for consumption. So here's a pramana saying you should keep the glass or the cup of water on the right side of the plate. But actually, if you keep it on the left side of the plate, it's much easier to touch it with your left hand, right? To pick it up with your left hand. So like I said, there's this difference. Some people say you have to drink the water with the right hand. I don't agree, and I don't know where this is coming from, but we should try to find out why they're saying like this and keeping the cup on the right side. So text 386. Whatever food is left over after a meal should be distributed to the distressed people for their satisfaction. Text 387 to 388. After properly washing one's hands and mouth, one should sprinkle a few drops of water on his right toe. Normally what happens is one finishes the meal, and then in order to go and wash his hands, he has to get up. He still has some wet food on his right hand, which may drip as he's going. This is not allowed to drip on the way to the bathroom or the way to the sink to wash your hands. So normally what happens is after we do the Uttara Poshanam, we put some water in the right hand, we sip Mamata Pidanamasi, and then we put some more water in the hand and we wash the hand slightly, turn it upside down, and drip it over the salt. There's salt on the plate, right? And that absorbs that water, right? Some people in South India, what they do is they also, next to the plate on the ground, they make a handprint back and forth like that, so as not to dirty the whole place on the way to the sink or to the bathroom to wash the hands, right? So then when people come to clean up the plates and everything like that, sometimes, of course, one takes the plate with him, wraps up the leaf plate and takes it with him, and deposits it in a bin or throws it to the cows or something like that before he washes his hands. But in any case, if you leave it, right, as a guest, you can leave the plate, but if your host requests you to take the plate and throw it, you should probably take it like that. After you take it, you wash your hands, and after washing the hands, right, you take some water and let the water drip down your right arm onto your right big toe. And there's a reason for this. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but there it is, mentioned also in Hari Bhakti Vilasa. Then one should happily meditate on the Supreme Lord, who provides him with nourishment. Next, while surrounded by pious people, one should chant the mantra, Anapate Annasya no Dehi, which invokes the grace of the Lord. So Anapate means O Supreme, O Lord of food, addressing the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the Lord of food, right? As Annam, as Mahaprasadam personified, right? Annasya, of grains, of food, no Dehi. Give us of food, like that. So, O Lord, grace us with prasadam, like that. Okay, so then text 389 says, one should then chew betel nuts. This is an instruction for grihastas, normally brahmacharis, and other ashramas like vanaprasthas and sannyasis don't chew betel nuts or tambalam or pan, right, that are offered to the Lord, and sit down with the other devotees and chant most auspicious holy names. Chant the most auspicious holy names. It says here, Japed Divyam, Bhagavan Nama Mangalam. Okay, nice. Like that. So now we're going to hear the glories of prasadam, the glories of food which is offered, the remnants of food which are offered to the Supreme Lord.